Well, hello and welcome to the Prospect Blueprint. I'm Kelly Kleinman, and this is my esteemed podcast partner, MLB vet of 24 years, catching 16 Cy Young Award winners, and of course the 1983 World Series MVP. His name is Mr. Rick Dempsey. Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. Today's guest is an executive producer by trade and an independent baseball team owner by passion. But it goes far deeper than that, as he has replaced the void that the Oakland A's left when they bailed on the Bay Area to go to Vegas, like the Raiders did. Unbelievable. He's the co-owner of the Oakland Ballers, a.k.a. the Oakland Bees. He's brought back a sense of community and pride and local flavor to American baseball. Of course, the potential for American baseball, or baseball growth, period, in this current baseball climate is very high, thanks to the Japanese gambling and the Japanese viewers watching the Japanese players dominate when it counts the most. Maybe we could even afford a little bit of the credit to the Savannah Bananas. I don't know. I have a hard time doing that, but I guess it's true. Bryan, Carmel, welcome.
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Rick, step up to the plate.
It's exciting today because he does live around LA. I'm sure, but man, whatever's going on in your life, I mean, screenwriting has to be one of the most exciting things that anybody could do in LA with the motion picture studios and all the big LA movie stars and everything. But well, what was the inciting incident for you, Bryan, that led you from Hollywood to founding an independent baseball team in, of all places, Oakland?
Well, good question, Rick. Well, I'm from the East Bay. Like I grew up in a town just outside of Oakland, went to high school in Oakland, and grew up as a big baseball fan, big A's fan and a big sports fan. And, the relationship between the Oakland A's and the city of Oakland has been fraught for a long time, for a couple of decades. And it was a lot of, are they staying? Are they going? What's happening? Hope, hopelessness, despair, and sort of that cycle with different ballpark plans materializing and then fizzling out. And so that's the context in which we emerged. And, I was, my career has been as an executive and a writer and producer of mostly TV and a little bit of film. And in 2023, I was on a movie project, and then the writer's strike happens, and my project goes down, and I'm striking with my fellow writers, and watching Hollywood. I don't want to say crumble, but certainly contract, and thinking, God, this is what is the future of entertainment? But I love to be creative. I love to tell stories. And I'd love to figure out an application to do it where maybe I had a little bit more of a personal stake in it and could really actually build something. Because with TV projects, you do one, you put everything into it, and then you sometimes don't have a lot of control over what happens to it. And either way, you have to move on and find the next thing. And wouldn't it be nice to build something and then stay with it and see it continue to bear fruit? And then, in late spring 2023, we get word that the A's had been negotiating with the city of Las Vegas and that they'd entered a binding agreement. And like all Oakland sports fans, just felt like my heart had been ripped straight out of my chest, because it's not only, that we were losing our third major sports team in, I think, 5 or 6 years, because the Raiders had left and the Warriors had built a big stadium across the bay in San Francisco. But we're now losing baseball. And this is, I think Oakland sports fans consider ourselves to be, it's like Philly sports fans or Buffalo sports fans or Pittsburgh. We're gritty, we're blue collar, we're tough. And we are really proud of our legacy. And in the 70s, a little bit before my time, Oakland was winning Super Bowls and World Series and World Championships all at the same time. So considered itself to be at the center of the sports universe. Cut to a few decades later, we've lost all our teams, and it felt existential. Also because, the city of Oakland has, has had some challenges, and certainly it's a talking point on, on the radio and on Fox News, and look at these failed West Coast cities. Look at Oakland, California. They're closing the In-N-Out Burger on Hagenberger Road because of all the crime and homelessness. And it would, so there was this sort of national narrative that Oakland was a town that was failing, and that the A's leaving was the latest data point to prove that point, that this isn't like a pro sports city. So that didn't sit right. And at that time, I get a text from my buddy Paul Friedman, who I grew up with, went to high school with in Oakland, and who said, "Hey, Bryan, and we've been talking about this A's thing and being really sad about it." And he said, "I have a crazy idea." And I said, "Well, I like crazy ideas. What you got?" And then he said, what if we started a new baseball team? And I said, "Okay, that sounds interesting. Tell me more." And we started talking about it, and we realized that not only could it be a great business, but it could be a great story, because if we could disprove what was being said about Oakland, that this wasn't a pro sports town, and we could kind of reclaim that legacy and galvanize what had already been forming right in front of us, which was a movement to, what we call the sell movement, right? There was a lot of fan organizers that were organizing groups of people to protest at A's games, to try to compel, the owner of the A's to sell the team. We didn't think maybe that was going to be successful, but what was interesting ultimately, I didn't think he was going to sell the team, but what was interesting about it was how this fan base is so supercharged and organized and passionate. And what if we could enter ourselves into this narrative and say, "Hey, we've got a new team, believe in us, help us, let's all do this together." And we could show the world that a community can come together to raise itself up. And so that was the inciting incident of the Oakland Ballers.
I want you to know one thing first. Last year, or a year and a half ago, we were in negotiations with Oakland, wanting to give them all the money they needed to rebuild a brand new stadium down there on the waterfront. You probably saw the pictures of it and everything. We were just ready to do that. And we were going to build them. When they finally said they didn't want to do it in Oakland, we wanted to do it outside of Las Vegas for them too. 35 acres we had ready for them. All Fisher had to do was say, "Yeah, we'll move there." But we were ready to build you a stadium right there in Oakland on the waterfront. And it was, wow. We had everything rocking and rolling. It just never worked out. Fisher would never let it go. But whatever. What can you do?
Yeah.
But Oakland, man, I go back because I came into baseball when Oakland was a huge, massive force with Catfish Hunter and all the guys they had on those teams. Holy smokes. I was with Minnesota in 1969, but Oakland was just tearing up baseball in those days. Reggie, all of them, And I missed that kind of a baseball that was going on up there at that time, because they were strongest team as that ever was. 4 championships in a row. Come on, you kidding me?
Oh yeah, special fan base, special team, and and a lot of pride. And I think what for me, my big takeaway and what brought me to baseball is just how it's a way to bring diverse communities together for a shared experience and shared joy. And I think that that's so critical, especially at a time in our country where people are more polarized than ever. It's everybody. You disagree with your neighbor or somebody that you meet on the subway or whatever about one thing, and you decide that you hate them. And that's sort of the temperature of the country. And I love that the ballpark is this, sacred place where people are united. And so we just felt like, well, we want to create a space like that. We want to be part of the solution to what ails us.
Yeah. Well, with Oakland leaving that area, and what was your approach building the Ballers? Not just as a team, but as like a little movement to get baseball back for the community.
Well, good question. I mean, for us, first of all, it started with a lot of humility, because we were, who are we? We had no baseball experience. As you pointed out, I come from, television, and my partner Paul, he's a serial entrepreneur. He's an incredible builder, and I've seen him over the course of his career build things, starting with like a seed of an idea, turning into really sophisticated, profitable organizations that do well in the world and make money for their investors. So if there was anybody to do this with, it was definitely Paul, because I'd seen him do things like this before. And our approach was really, you know, to figure out a clarity, a vision of here's our core values, here's what we are, here's the type of organization that we want to create. And then and that organization was built by Oakland, built for Oakland, and really fan led. And it was going to depend on a concept that I like to call radical participation. We knew we weren't going to have the biggest budgets, we weren't going to have the biggest staff. We were going to really need to treat this more like a movement than a business, and figure out how to recruit and deploy fans to help us in every which way. And there's incredible people in Oakland, in the Oakland baseball fan base. So the key was like getting them bought in, getting them to believe in us, getting them to believe in this team. And then now I've got a Rolodex of fans who are ready to jump in and help and volunteer with anything we need. It's amazing. So yeah, that was the approach. It was getting the community invested and involved really early on by being transparent about our plans and what we were doing and what we needed help with. And then also engaging the city, finding a facility, building a baseball operation, which we knew nothing about at the time. So had to find people, who had some credibility within baseball, and finding the right partners, I think, across the board. Because when you're starting a baseball team, you're really starting like 4 or 5 businesses at once. You're starting, you have to build a team, but you also have to build a concessions business. You have to build a merchandise and apparel business, and
right.
You've got to build a sponsorship arm and a ticketing arm, and there's a lot of different sophisticated tentacles to creating, a healthy baseball team. And we had to do a lot of learning, and we had to do it really quickly because we really wanted to. We had the idea in June 2023, and opening day was June 2024. So we had 12 months to make it all happen, including finding a place to play, getting a league to let us in, everything.
Yeah, give us a little bit of that background. Being a screenwriter, of course, you've got a good understanding of character and narrative arcs. How have those skills translated into shaping the identity and the story of the Ballers from a player perspective? And I lean towards the Savannah Bananas. They have everyone that can do cartwheels and hump dances, and that seems to like get it done. But you have to compete in an independent baseball where it's actually, if you win, you draw crowds. If you lose, you don't. So what does that look like from that perspective?
Sure. So a couple of things. First of all, let's talk about the ecosystem of minor league baseball, because there's affiliate and there's independent. We're independent. I think that while some folks starting independent baseball teams would see that as a disadvantage, we saw it as a superpower, because if you're an affiliate team, you exist in order to do player development, right? You are a pitcher on a AA affiliate team. He's getting 6 innings because the folks up on high call down and say, I want you to give him 6 innings because he's rehabbing his shoulder and we want to see if he can hold up for 6 innings. It doesn't matter what happens, give him 6 innings. That's not the mindset in independent baseball, because we're not connected to an MLB team. We're trying to win championships. And I think that was really important to Oakland because of everything I said before about like the chemistry of the fan base, and the character of the fan base. Oakland is a town that has incredible pride and wants to see a championship culture built. There hadn't been a championship culture for a long time. In fact, we'd seen a lot of the best players that we came to care about, and you buy their jersey and then they get shipped off, like the Giambis, right? The next year. And so that was the fan base that we were stepping into. So the first thing was to determine that we wanted to create and maintain a championship baseball culture. That started with bringing in the right people to build that. So that was for us, Don Wakamatsu, historic guy who's had a 40-year career in baseball. He was the first Asian American manager of the in MLB history, managed the Mariners, I think from 08 to 11 or 12. And, he had credibility. and he was going to help us create that culture that we were seeking. So that was on the baseball side. And then in terms of, Kelly, what you're mentioning with things like the bananas, the fan experience, we had to create a product that was differentiated from MLB, because there's still MLB, close enough to anybody that was going to go to a game in Oakland that they could go across the bay or take BART if they wanted. So we had to come up with something different. We weren't going to do banana ball because we had already determined that the winning and losing was going to be really important. So that then spoke to, well, what about these segments in between innings, right? And my career started at like MTV Networks, and I worked on shows like Total Request Live and Pop-Up Video, a lot of shows that had segments, were broken down, 3-hour programming blocks with 18 segments. And I looked at a baseball game and said, okay, this is 9 innings. There's 18 transitions. Each of those transitions is 2.5 minutes. Those are 2.5-minute programming blocks. How do we program them? How do we create like a flow to a game where it feels like it's this group experience and people are getting bought in and there's actually a trajectory to the emotional experience? So that's what we're still trying to do. So it's the baseball happens and that's between the lines. And then, the show happens when the baseball is not happening. And what can we do that is experimental and interesting and might really resonate with fans in between the innings? So our vibe at Ballers games is, we call it 48 block parties around a baseball game. We do a lot of bringing in rappers and bands and music and performances, and we have this block party feel. Sometimes we have performances in our food truck area that are simultaneous programming to the baseball game. So people come with their kids are comfortable and they run around, and it feels like, you're just at like a community block party. Not necessarily, you don't have to be in your seats the whole time. I think I read a statistic early on that like the average fan at a baseball game only sits down and watches baseball for 4 or 5 innings. So that really was interesting to me. It's like, okay, we better come up with interesting stuff happening besides for just you're sitting in your seat watching baseball.
You got that Bill Veeck concept, that Max
Exactly.
Patkin in between innings was ungodly funny. Unbelievable individual. Talk about Jim Carrey being able to contort. Max Patkin was unequaled. We need that. I think this is fantastic. Rick, I'm going to have you take the next question because we're limited on time. I want to get into 3 more questions and then our extra or our exit. What is it? Introduction and then
Outro.
Thank you. I knew there was a word there. Yeah. So from the concept of where you see the league expanding to, but go ahead and take this next question, Rick. You know what it is.
Well, I like your direction, Bryan, moving on for this part. Well, when you imagine the Oakland Ballers 10 years from now, what actually do you see as a movement to well, what am I trying to say here?
Like a league expansion, even. That's kind of like what I want to ask,
It seems like it's more than you're just regular old little like getting a team together, and all that kind of. This is a lot bigger than that. What do you see in 10 years from now?
Yeah, well, a couple of things, Rick. I mean, one is that I want to see us selling out every game. That's I think right now our ballpark is 4,100 seats. I'd like to see us be able to build at Raimondi Park towards maybe double that with our footprint. There's certainly the space. And in terms of the expansion of this movement, the way I see it, we exist in order to break down the walls between fans and sports teams. I think there's a model there. I think the model is probably replicable. And so we're interested in, seeing more. I think that independent baseball is sort of like the perfect place to build something that's a little bit between what MLB provides and what the Savannah Banana provides, where, I guess the metaphor we use is like there was the NBA in the 1970s, and then the Harlem Globetrotters came around and turned it into a show with all this flash and behind the back passes and crazy dunks. But then it was really the Showtime Lakers that synthesized the NBA and the Harlem Globetrotters. And they were playing competitive basketball, but there was a little bit more flair. and it was a little bit more of a vibe and a show, and that really resonated, and that really put the NBA on the map in the 80s. And so I think there's a recipe there for us to learn from in terms of just continuing to build out what is a really special vibe that draws people in, because we're all living increasingly in our devices and on our phones. And I think that that's with the advent of AI, that's only going to increase. And so to me, it's like, if we can build this in real life space where people come together and have an opportunity to be a part of some shared rituals with other people in the flesh, in person, I think that's going to really resonate with a much, much bigger group of people than what we have today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. First of all, when do you start your season? When does it start? When does it end?
Sure. So we're in the Pioneer League. Pioneer League, historic baseball league, been around since 1939. All the other teams in the league are in Utah, Colorado, Montana, and Idaho.
Right.
And we're the first California expansion team. It's a 96 game season, starts in mid-May, and then goes through mid-September. Depends how far you go. This year, we won the championship. In fact, we broke the Pioneer League's all-time wins record, which was really exciting. So we played deep into September this year, and but that's kind of the breakup of the season.
Every team has its heroes, rivalries, redemption, and all that kind of stuff. You guys, by the way, congratulations, because you won it last year. You are the 2025 champions, just in case you didn't know that, Rick, Pioneer champs. How conscious of you are on crafting the story of the players themselves? Because that's really what's the compelling part of this whole thing. It's not just winning, it's who's winning.
Really conscious. I mean, our players, it's a big part of what we do, and we're trying to get better and better at it each year. Our players are the guys, like, as you guys know, because you're baseball guys, that, MLB was 60 rounds of the draft, and I think 40, and then contracted down to 20. Our players are the players who maybe would have been drafted rounds 20 to 30. Maybe they went to a D3 school, or they had they're a little too old, or they had some elbow ding that some scout was worried about. So they didn't quite get drafted. And they have the same goal that any baseball player has. They want to move on. They want to make it. They want to make it to MLB. They want to be Shohei Ohtani, right? So our job is to help them get there. So we still, but on the way, we want to win championships, and we want to represent the city of Oakland and building this championship culture. So the players are super interesting, because they're people who are laying it all on the line to follow a dream that they have, probably a dream that they had since childhood. So anytime, I always find anytime somebody is really going for it in their life, they've identified their dream and they're trying to achieve it, I'm on board with that person. So we try to showcase those people as much as we can. Last year we had Kelsey Whitmore on our team. She's the first woman to ever play in MLB or in Pioneer League history. She pitched for us. Watching her, strike out grown men was just amazing. I have a 12-year-old daughter. Her and her friends would go and watch Kelsey, and they were completely obsessed with her. Kelsey's gone on, and she's on the Savannah Bananas now. Speaking of, telling the story of our players and watching them follow their dreams is a huge part of it.
We've got 2 minutes to do a word association, Rick. I'm going to have to preempt our other 3 questions. But, Bryan, I've got something I think you're going to find really super interesting. We'll talk about it next week. Okay, this is a rapid-fire word association. We love playing this once in a while. We have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be the first thought that crosses your mind. Favorite Oakland A of all time?
Walt Weiss.
Wow. Favorite baseball game that you ever saw?
Oh, it's got to be the championship game this year. Game 5. Game 5. Ballers, Chuckers.
Oh, okay. MLB, out of touch or hitting the note?
Pass.
We know what the answer is. Favorite comedian of all time?
George Carlin.
That's the best answer possible. By the way, Bryan writes comedy as well. as many other things. Okay, favorite Baltimore Oriole catcher of all time, with or without a mustache?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. With or without a mustache, you're throwing me. Would he be maybe on this Zoom with us, Kelly?
Son of a gun, that's the guy.
I'll take Rick Dempsey for
Damn,
200.
what a long shot there.
Rick, you've got 15 seconds. Anything else to add to this before we outro?
No, I just think it's so darn exciting that we have you in place and you're bringing an energy back to that area up there that is lost at the Oakland A area. Holy smokes. But I think it's very exciting when you're going to combine entertainment along with baseball at the same time. I think you've got something there. May not be as expansive as Major League Baseball, but it sure sounds pretty darn exciting to a lot of us who we get looked at. I'm from the old school, Bryan, and you go around Major League Baseball right now, they do not even want to talk to you. They won't even come over and say hi to you if you're sitting in the grandstands close to them because you're not part of their analytical era. I think between you and I analytics, maybe there might be some of it that might be okay, but going up there and seeing 3 and 4 hitters in the lineup hitting the $170 and they're in there every day because all they can do is hit a home run, that's not the way the game is. And I think there's a lot of teams that are not saying it, but they're not so hell-bent sold on Major League Baseball the way it was or it is being played through an analytical view.
Yeah,
I don't like it, and that's probably why they don't talk to me anymore.
Well, we'd like to thank you, Bryan, for joining us and wish you all the luck in the world as you help grow the game on a grassroots level. It can work and it will work. For all of us at the Prospect Blueprint, thank you for joining us. And like, subscribe, and comment. Bryan, we'll be in touch soon.